Hey guys, this is a new channel talking about things not usually covered by the media. So please leave a comment with your opinion. It would help me out a lot and help me improve. And also, like and subscribe. It would help us a lot with the algorithm. So I've wanted to do this video for a long time, and I'm certain I'm gonna botch it. But this is in the series of warnings on how democracy falls. But we're gonna talk this time about the Israeli Supreme Court and how it subverted every democratic idea there is. The story of the Israeli Supreme Court is much the story of Aaron Barak. Aaron Barak was a professor of law in Israel, and he became first the Attorney General, and then the Supreme Court judge, and then Supreme Court president. During his time in the Supreme Court, he performed the constitutional revolution in Israel. So we have to start at the beginning. Israel does not have a constitution. It has a set of basic laws, each passed separately, which someday should become a constitution. This is called the Harari decision, or the Harari compromise in Hebrew, which happened in the beginning of the 50s. This said that as Israel was established without a constitution, the parliament, or the Knesset, will pass basic laws. Each will be a clause in the constitution, an amendment, if you will, and when all of them will be legislated, the Knesset will vote on making them a constitution, and will have a constitution. But as you can read, in 1992, Aaron Barak, president of the Supreme Court, declared a constitutional revolution and attached a constitutional ascendancy to the basic laws of Israel. That is, a Supreme Court judge came up one day and decided, and now we have a constitution without anyone ever agreeing to it. So, as there are only several amendments of the constitution, that left a lot for him to make up on his own. So how did it happen? Well, that's a story also by this guy, who led the vote on the basic law of human dignity and liberty. This law basically states that every man has the right to dignity, to freedom, protection of property, protection of life, and personal liberty, in very, very vague terms, which is obviously a good thing. Uriel Lin was a member of the Knesset, and he led the voting on this law. And Uriel Lin later wrote a book saying that while he agreed with Aaron Barak that the law will give the Supreme Court the ability to overthrow, Uriel Lin later wrote a book saying that while he knew that this law is meant to give the Supreme Court, Uriel Lin later wrote a book saying that he knew this law is meant to give the Supreme Court the ability to cancel laws enacted by the Parliament and rewrite laws as well. But he also said that he knew it will not pass the Knesset, so he just lied to the Knesset, saying it will not give the Supreme Court any of the rights that he thought it would give. He also said he was cahooting with Aaron Barak behind the scenes on how to make this law. So, as basic laws had no special meaning in the Israeli system, it was voted into law by a majority of 32 to 23. Not even half the Knesset were there when they apparently enacted the Constitution. So you can see the law is very nice. There shall be no violation of life, body, or dignity of any person as such. There shall be no violation of the property of the person. All persons are entitled to protection of their life, body, and dignity. And the most important part here is the violation of rights. There shall be no violation of rights under the basic law except by a law befitting the values of the State of Israel, enacted for a proper purpose, and to the extent no greater than is required. This sentence was used by Aaron Barak to subvert Israeli democracy. Since no one can actually say that a purpose of a law is proper, because it's only opinion, and no one can say what is the extent needed, any law can be thrown out just by the claim that the extent of damage to human rights is greater than is required by the opinion of the judges. But this is only one part of the judicial revolution, which led American justices like Antonin Scalia to say, when I really want to be shocked and when I want to see that my court is not really so bad after all, I read decisions by the Israeli Supreme Court. Israel's Supreme Court is widely regarded as the most activist court on planet Earth. So what else did Aaron Barak do? Well, a while before Barak, gradually there was the right of standing was thrown out of the court. The right of standing means that if you're going to the Supreme Court, you need to have a grievance. This means your rights must have been infringed in some way. But the Israeli Supreme Court didn't like it because it limited the cases it could take on. For example, you couldn't go to the court claiming that your friend's right had been infringed. This would require him going to the court. So this was thrown out without any law passing allowing it. And now the Supreme Court just allows anyone, for any reason, to petition it. But Judge Barak also brought in two other things. One called reasonability, which became for the court a reason to throw out laws or to forbid the government of doing things. Which means the Supreme Court judges can decide that something is just unreasonable in their eyes and therefore it's illegal. For example, the case of US student Lara El-Qassam, who supported at some time BDS movement against Israel. For this reason, the law allows for the Minister of Interior to forbid entry to Israel according to the minister's judgment. That's what the law says, according to the minister's judgment. So comes this Lara El-Qassam to the Israeli airport after flying in from the US and says, I want entry to Israel. And she's denied entry because she supported the BDS. She appeals to one court, and the court says it's within the prerogative of the minister. And then she appeals again, and the court again says it's within the prerogative of the Ministry of Interior and the minister. The law allows him to deny entry to people. But then she appealed a third time to the Supreme Court, and they just decided the Minister of Interior acted unreasonably and allowed her entry. So they basically canceled the laws of entry into Israel just because they didn't like how they were used. Another part of the revolution of Aaron Barak was proportionality. He decided that the court can decide when is the government acting proportionally to the thing they want to achieve. But the definition of proportionality given in English may make more sense than it does in Israel. Because if you go to the Israeli Hebrew and you put it in Google Translate, you get this definition. Precedents of the Supreme Court require every person and every body to exercise proportionality in taking every step. The Supreme Court has assumed the authority to intervene in the decisions of government bodies in the State of Israel, even though they are within the scope of their powers, if they have not passed the test of proportionality. Again, the test of proportionality is a subjective test. What one deems proportional, another may deem unproportional. All of that with the combination of the doctrine of the reasonable person, which says you don't actually deal with the actual people, but with what the judges believe to be a reasonable person, allows them to overthrow any decision. For example, if the Prime Minister says he wants something done, the court would say a reasonable Prime Minister would not want that same thing done, and therefore the decision is invalid. A reasonable Prime Minister would do otherwise. All of this in combination made the Judge Richard Posner of the US Court of Appeals, in an article called The Enlightened Despot, to term Aaron Barak a legal pirate. You can read this text and you can watch the debate between them, where any person with any understanding of law and democracy would say what happened in Israel is completely insane. It allows the courts to throw out any decision they don't like. They intervene in anything: war, immigration, human rights, medical policy, One time they forced the government to pay for a woman's cancer treatment. Any major decision that the government wants to make, any major law, any law that the parliament wants to pass, has to be allowed by the Supreme Court. And as you may have heard, basically all new laws in Israel are petitioned to the Supreme Court and they approve or deny them. In the last elections, there were several petitions to not allow Benjamin Netanyahu to run for office.
We must obey the rule of law. And for me, the rule of law is not just the law of rules. Because as I mentioned, also in Germany, you had the rule of law very strong.
This is the godfather of the modern Israeli Supreme Court, and he just plain out says, if you don't like what he's saying, if you don't like what he's doing, you're basically Nazi Germany.
It means also the rule of human rights, of values. You see, he can speak because we say that there is free speech, you know.
You see, Barak, the Israeli courts think that they're the one giving rights. They think that they can give the right to free speech and they can take it away.
This is what you have to say about my theory of judging. I can survive very easily. So I think. Thank you.
This is just a tiny taste of how it came to be that any decision by any government agency or the parliament in Israel can be overthrown by the Supreme Court, and they basically do whatever they want, rendering voting almost useless. This is going to be a series of videos talking about these issues, and please leave a comment and say what I can do to make it clearer. Please share if you think it's useful,